Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series finale of Charmed. A great series finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, obviously, Josefina found the tape, and she shows up at the Blue Camellia just as Kayla leaves, and it's like, cool, I gotta tell you guys everything that's going on. She even brings up the fact is that Maggie ends up getting like pixie wings, and it's kind of awesome and everything, but we kind of subvert that entire timeline because all that stuff that happens, like, oh yeah, like the whole thing with Mel and Roxy looking for Beaver. So basically the past two episodes, not just episode 12, but even episode 11, at least most of episode 11 doesn't happen in this timeline. So it also makes me think that they are doing the time travel rules of that timeline A is no longer around. That got deleted, and now this timeline B is the potentially only timeline. At least that's how I'm viewing that whole situation. So, but nevertheless. But yeah, it's pretty rough being like, wow. So we've seen our deaths. It's like Maggie sees that Jordan dies. I mean, they still die. Her and Kayla still ended up dying at the end. And Mel seeing herself die. It's like, cool. We need to stop that. Which she immediately confronts Roxy. It's like, yeah, Bevo got killed. It's actually this guy. And you were going to go to sleep for 7 years and not even tell me about it? I was like, I like how we're tying that back in. Because it's like, right, you can't like end this without resolving that kind of like whole situation. So I love that it's, Harry initially showed up because this is his first time escaping from Diana and that other, that videotape world. And the moment he gets there, he's talking to Roxy about like, oh, do you know anything about Otherworld and Charm? And she's like, oh, I remember this time I took these drugs, so on and so forth. And she's trying to handle her priorities, which involve, right, you should take over the Blue Camellia. And it's like, right, what other like purpose do you have right now? Because he's still in between trying to find out what's next for him. Obviously, he is no longer a white lighter. He still helps out the Charmers whenever he can, but he doesn't feel the same role. It's just like, right, I'm a friend that helps out from time to time. But Josefina brings him up to speed about everything. They go to the video store, meet up with Diana. So I love the whole thing of like, right, they're holding hands, and then everyone's like, positioning themselves like to get a better signal on the TV, trying to figure out where to stop all this. Maggie got Jordan, filled him in on everything. It's like, right, spent so much time going back and forth about our circumstances, and it's not to now knowing what the possibility could be that like, right, we wasted so much time, and there's a timeline where you died and you weren't here, so all that time we wasted, it's like, right, we know how we feel about each other, and let's try and find our way forward. It's like, also, what was that about me being dead? And so Mel went to stop Kayla dead. It's like, right, you're not in this alone. I know, like, I wish Dev was here. I wish that so much for you. And she's like, I also wish Macy was here. And I wish my mom was here. But, we can't change that, Even Harry's saying, even if they could go back in time, like, the results would be pretty catastrophic. But at the very least, they can stop this really bad situation from happening going forward. So they ended up stopping the troll from because of her power and everything, she was a Charmer, and being as powerful as she is, having access to the power she has, she's able to notice the shift in the timeline, because she's like, oh, just because they know the future, they think they can change everything. It's like, well, she has something else planned. At the time, we didn't know what it was, but they ended up stopping the troll. Rather, he stopped himself just so he wouldn't be captured. He killed himself. They were trying to talk him down, like, right, it doesn't have to go down like this. Maybe if at the time, well, he probably wouldn't have listened at the time. He wouldn't have believed them if they had told him then and there about an art, like he wouldn't have listened. So he ends up killing himself, continue like the last little bit of the Tallyman in the series where he used that thing that Tallyman used to blow people up. I guess more so is like, right, so you don't capture me and use me as a means of finding out what the Lost One has planned. He kills himself because he thinks it's a worthy sacrifice. Obviously, it sucks that it played out like that for him, that at the end that still happened, but at the very least, the others don't end up getting sacrificed, including Chloe's other sister, so it works out in the end, but still. But obviously, for the Lost One, for Inara, it's like, no, it doesn't matter how things are playing out, I'm still going to win in the end. You can try and change the future. She's not going to listen to him because like they're like, right, we can talk this out, but she refuses to listen. And so they end up kind of dividing, conquering to try and find each of the other sisters because they're the only ones that could potentially know what Inara's up to. So Maggie and Jordan go after, was it Ashani? And no, they go after the Guardian, which apparently she's in. I guess maybe she wasn't captured by demons. She just showed up and decided to go full blown, like, I'm gonna fight like demons and stuff. Obviously, I love that each group was chosen for a very specific reason because Maggie's trying to pull the Guardian back, but despite everything, it's like, right, they're all stuck in, despite these OG charm ones, they're stuck in their feelings. That the Guardian is like, right, you're this ethereal, you're this flowy dress ethereal person and lady in a tree, not some demon, but it's like, yeah, this is her way of compensating, which is very perfect from obviously it all coming full circle for Maggie's storyline this season, where after Macy died, she had she gave into her feelings, she gave into her anger and fought demons to kind of deal with it. And I thought that was so poetic, especially because Maggie wasn't only fighting her, because like I think out of anyone, Maggie's probably the most skilled at the hand-to-hand combat, which once again parallels, because I think, you know, if I remember correctly, I don't think I ever brought that up or thought about it. It's like, right, like Phoebe was like that too, because she was the one that took like the more hand-to-hand combat like lessons, if I remember correctly. I didn't even think of or remember that until just now. Regardless, but it wasn't just like, oh, I'm gonna use like, you know, fighting you to stop you. But it's also like she's kind of using, like, obviously Maggie's main study has always been psychology, so she's using that. Plus, you add in the fact that you also add in that she's also going through therapy recently, dealing with everything with Macy, you know, so she's a lot more equipped to pull her back. It's like, I get it. She's like, I wanted to fight after losing Macy, but this isn't a way to handle things. The fact is, you need to learn how to forgive. And she's like, what, my sister? It's like, no, yourself. You were beating yourself up the entire time, just like Maggie was beating herself up and blaming herself about what happened to Macy. It's like, there's nothing you could have done. And, you know, it's like, right, the choice you made all those years ago, when it came to an art, is like, you can't change that now, but we can do something about it now. Like, we can't change that, but we can do something about it now. And on the flip side, Mel and Kayla are trying to find Ashani, and I love that it's like, ooh, these apple fritters, and Kayla's about to get one. She's, oh, it's like my mom, and like Mel slapping her hand, like, no, stop it. It's like, these are drugged. And she's like, what? You really need to watch that tape. It seems like she's the only one that hasn't watched it. At least, yeah, she probably just got filled in by Mel about everything, so she hasn't really watched everything. So they end up tracking her down where she's at a bowling alley hitting on an older couple. It's like, oh, do you guys ever think about, you know, this late in your relationship, ever think about swinging? It's like, well, yeah, because in her defense, she is older than they are. But I love Kayla being like, oh, Aunt Ashani. It's like, we got to give her ointment. And then she just completely sizzling her little threesome that she was trying to make happen. I'm like, okay. But she's high. Once again, neither one is, you know, with everything going on, even knowing that their sisters involved in all this, behind all this, they still weren't willing to help because they were, you know, drowning in their own sorrows and regrets. So Kayla challenged her to a game of bowling, and I thought it was going to be a thing of like, oh, I'm going to use my magic, I'm going to do something and kind of cheat and win. It's like, no, it just seems like, no, Ashani like is crushing him because apparently she invented bowling. It's like, yeah, it kind of sucks when you go toe to toe with someone who's been walking the earth for a very, very long time. But I was wondering if it was going to be Kayla that would be able to pull her back, but instead it was Mel, because Kayla kind of helps with the whole Inara situation. So, but with Ashani, Mel is able to understand because, right, I know what it's like to, you know, drink and sleep all your feelings away. And it's like, right, like, oh, and if I don't want to help you, what are you going to do? And Mel just hugs her and is just like, right, I understand. Like, you know, you have your regrets, your feelings about it and everything. Was able to kind of, I think, made her feel like, right, because Mel could understand more so than anyone, but that doesn't fix, the issues that is, it's just, it doesn't make that hurt go away. It's still there. So now the two OG charm ones are reunited and they're bickering back and forth. It's like, wow, which is, I think, so beautiful that like, oh, the first time they probably seen each other in millennia probably, and it's just like, oh man, they're back at it again. It's just like, and just you have Kayla, Mel, and Maggie just sitting there watching this, but we ultimately find out from Harry, who spoke to the troll in limbo, because he was like, wait, I was supposed to go to heaven. It's like, no, let me break it down to you, bro. The adults one, he didn't lie to you, she lied to you. Inara, she's a charm one. It's like, wait, what? Once again, all this charmed hate you had, and it was a charm one that was manipulating you the entire time, and you didn't even realize it. But Harry's like, right, the person you're mad at isn't these, like, you're mad at three women who are great, no, wonderful women who are just trying to do the best that they can. But they're not really the only ones you were mad at. He just needed... That's what the Tallyman did. A lot of people had their frustrations about a lot of stuff going on, but things in their own personal lives, they needed an outlet for that frustration they were deflecting. And so the charm ones ended up catching a lot of that brunt. Yes, some of it understandable from the magical world, but also like in this particular troll's case, it's like there was other elements to it. But find out that she's making a bomb. She's doing the inverse of the other timeline where, oh, we're wiping out humans. Turning them into trees is one thing. But this time, and I don't think there was no reversing that anyway, sadly. So they were kind of as good as dead, sadly. But in this case, she's doing the inverse of, I'm going to wipe out all the magical creatures. It's like, I guess it's like, right, if I can't rule over you and make a perfect paradise for you, then no, I'll just stop you. It's like, wow, that's, I mean, she obviously went to the most extremes on both ends of the matter, because she's punishing humans because, like, humans, they weren't great to begin with. The hierarchy is that the magical community should be on top, which, well, if I can't lead the magical community down the right path, I'll wipe all of us out and just kind of, which is like, okay, that's very psychotic of you to go down that route, because you're going to wipe out everyone in the process. So the only way to fix this is to hopefully get the OG charm ones together again, so they make her rise, which I love. Like, she was villainous, but she wasn't nearly as villainous as she was in episode 11 and 12. In this particular case, once again, it's kind of the comparison is to the Avatars. They weren't necessarily, well, in their case, they weren't really bad. There's some shady stuff to get to that point, but they were trying to create a better world. And in her own twisted mind, or just because she's been drowning in anger towards her siblings, because she, it's the whole conversation of the road to hell and all that. The best of intentions get corrupted because she was sealed away, betrayed by the people she was closest to, her family. They weren't even blood related, but they became sisters, and to be betrayed by the people that you were closest to. And in that case, like, all that anger, her desire for good, trying to make the world a better place, was twisted and contorted by her anger. But now once again, she's just super petty, and she's like, oh, you guys look, oh my god, and Charmans. And when I say I mean because she wasn't talking like that, but to be fair, she wasn't around her sisters. But I like that it is that back and forth. They're like, right, we're sorry. And she's like, oh, you want to apologize to me now because, you need something from me. And they're like, wow, this attitude of yours, yeah, it makes it real easy to get over the guilt. I'm like, oh, you guys, once again, it's like, oh, you are sisters, when you bicker back and forth like that. But there is no way to stop what's already begun, because the bomb was already it was like minutes away from blowing up by the time Harry, Josefina, and Jordan found it. But it's like, right, there's no stopping this now. Basically, the amount of energy that's being released would mean someone would have to basically take that all in, but it would destroy them. But they're willing to make that sacrifice, because she's even saying like, oh yeah, you lost your sister and you found this replacement. But it's like, shut up. It's like, right, Kayla is our sister through and through, and if you guys want to bicker and whatever, fine, but we won't let the magical world being destroyed be our legacy, And in the end, they're willing to sacrifice themselves. And even Kayla kind of, having no regrets in the end. They're like, I'm sorry, we should have let you walk away. And she's like, if you had let me walk away and stayed out of it, I wouldn't have found you too. So this sisterhood that was formed from this, and I thought that was beautiful. And in the end, you know, especially I think Kayla willing to make that sacrifice for people she only just found, the sisterhood she had only found. It's very reminiscent of their circumstances. So they're willing to sacrifice themselves, and even Inara is like, right, despite everything, you know, our legacy doesn't just have to be, you know, what it's been. Like, our legacy could be us, you know, to me being able to save the world, obviously with her sisters, and they end up sacrificing themselves instead. And I think maybe with them being reunited at the end, them sacrificing themselves like that, I think the charmed curse is forever broken. At least that's what I like to think of it, because their shattering, the shattering of their sisterhood is what led to things falling out. It's one of those things where it's like, I actually kind of appreciate it on an emotional level. Yes, it's not like the bombastic, like, oh, let's take down this person. It's like, no, like, it's a very weird, it's a, once again, Kingdom Hearts way of handling things. It's also not as depressing as everything in the final season, how things ended in the original show. Because if you remember correctly, Billy had to basically kill her sister. If I remember correctly, because her sister wouldn't stop. Her sister had been corrupted. She kind of corrupted Billy, but in the end, Billy was like, no, we don't have to do this. And Billy ended up having to stop, to save the charmed ones from her. Like, she ended up killing her own sister in the process. So I think it's a nice inverse where, you know, not the ending they fully planned, but still, like, to make it kind of an inverse of that, where it's like, no, the sisters coming together, sacrificing themselves, do it for the greater good, whereas Billy ended up having to kill her sister for the greater good. So I think that, and it's almost making up for the fact that the other two having to seal their sister away, because that was the only option that they had at the time. But it's like, right, we could have found a better way. We could have worked things through. And once again, I like to believe, like, whatever generation of charm ones, you know, follow after Mel, Maggie, and Kayla, I believe that there would be no trouble of, like, yeah, they'll have their typical issues, but I think the full-blown, like, oh, their sisterhood is always meant to fall apart and break, like, I don't think that would happen anymore. At least I'd like to believe that's the case. So luckily they walked away from this in the end, and luckily, Mel made it in time to see Roxy before she had to go. But it's like, right, the closer she gets to her hibernation, the foggier her mind gets. And I love it, like, her not being able to speak well. Yeah, this is too much roast beef. Responsibility. Because Mel, I forgot what it was she was saying, and it was like, oh, something hit wall. And she's like, she didn't take it well, and I'm like, I love that. I thought that was such a cute moment between them, and I like that, you know, in the end, they do have their moment together. It's like, yeah, kind of sucks. It's like, right, just things started between us. It wasn't just like any other casual hookup. It did mean something between us, is what she was saying to Roxy earlier, and she's planning on looking after the blue camellia for Roxy, because it's not just like, you know, kiss and tell Mel, but it's like, no, it's because this place is too important. This place can be the foundation of where everyone, and obviously it's been that place where people in the magical community can come and feel safe, and this could be that extending bridge out to do better, like Mel had promised that the Charmed Ones would be when it comes to the magical world, and listen to people and connect more and kind of be there, not just look after witches, but look after other people as well. And she's like, right, I don't know what my feelings are going to be like in 7 years, but I do know that I will be here to greet you and welcome you home. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. I was like, yeah, it's a very complicated long-distance relationship. And once again, it's still kind of heartbreaking. You know, Roxy bringing it up at the end. It's like, right, her wife leaving. You'd assume Camelia's somewhere out there in the world, so maybe eventually at some point in time Camellia would come back, and that probably would have been maybe a future storyline that might have gotten I mean, granted, it would have been like 7 years before Roxy would have came back, or maybe they would have found some way to kind of help her circumstances. I don't know. But 3 months later, it's like, right, Mel, Maggie, and Kayla were drinking with a satyr or something like that, and there was a whole bunch of drinking, because that's their way to reach out to the community. And even Maggie being like, I would have thought a battle, never thought it would end with like she's like, oh, I thought that's how we kind of resolve some of these issues, maybe a battle. Wasn't expecting a keg stand. And I love Kayla's way around it. It was like, yeah, I kind of had Josefina water down my drinks. That's super shady, that's super messed up. But I love the painting that she made for them. She's like, right, this is how I see us. And I don't know, I thought that was a beautiful sentiment, because obviously for Kayla, it's like now after everything, has her own studio kind of in the back, and she's just, pouring out inspiration, for her paintings and stuff. So, and also Maggie and Jordan were looking for a new place together, and Mel is okay with it now, because at the beginning she didn't want Maggie leaving, because it's like, right, Mel was kind of going through it just like Maggie was, but I love her saying that, it's like, no, I want to support you, because you are going to the place, moving into a house that you, an apartment or a place that you love with the person that you love. The difference between at the beginning and where we are now is you are running away from something. Now you're running towards something. It's a big difference, and I can support that. And I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Harry and Jordan are talking at the end, because Harry had, he had traded away his white lighter powers for his necro lighter powers, and yes, he had his reasons for doing that. It was mainly just for Macy, but Josefina told him at, at the time before he went to go see that troll, that you could do something more with that. That maybe that could be your way of using that power to help people, and that's what he wants to do. He burns one paper, all his fears, regrets, and troubles, and the other, the wishes that he wants, he keeps, as a work of reminder of this is what I need to work on. So he wants to use his powers. He might not be a white lighter anymore, but he can start using these necro lighter powers. In the particular case of the troll, he can help his family out, and so maybe that can, in the end, help him move on from Limbo. Because I think, because Josefina had said, you were able to free Dev from Limbo. Him and Maggie were able to talk, Maggie and Ray, and that led to him finally to being able to move on to peace. So it all worked out. So showing that your power can be used for good to, help people deal with some of their regrets, some of the things that are keeping them bound in Limbo and not being able to move on. And then Jordan wanting to, step in the role of White Light. Because I was wondering, are we going to make him the full-blown... He's kind of played that role a little, but I was like, is he going to be full-on the White Lighter for the Charm Ones? Which I guess he'll kind of fill that role a little bit. Him and Harry kind of, fill that void to some extent. But also, he wants to help not just witches. That's what the White Lighters have always been, there to aid and look after witches. But... because Jordan's also, as an outsider to this magical world, didn't necessarily, well, to be fair, being kind of chosen as a white lighter, that whole thing, but this situation, it kind of happened, and he, it's trying to make the most of it. Obviously, being a medic, it's almost, and his experience and everything, this feels like the most poetic path for him to be on. So he wants to use his powers to help everyone in the magical community. So everyone finding their paths forward, I think, is pretty neat. But in the end, there's a whole situation with Diana. She sent a message to them, and they go to the video store, and she's gone. She found her way back to her world, was finally free. I guess it's right, you feel the situation you're supposed to, but part of me wonders, are we going to find out that there's more to Diana's situation, that maybe she might not have been a good person, or maybe she was trapped there for a reason, or... maybe it was just to help the Charm Ones with their situation, which would also help the other world. But they see a door with the Charm Ones, another world with the Charm Ones. I'm like, wait a minute, are you doing? I was like, because I was almost about to say, there's no way you're going to make them pop up at the very end. If you did, that'd be cool. But I was like, there's no way you're able to do that. Maybe given another season, maybe they could have. I don't know. But in the end, they go oh, well, right, do we really want to deal with another world with another Charm Ones? We barely dealt with this one, but it's but we did. We faced the challenge. Yeah, it might have been challenging, but we faced it and we won. So this is kind of our destiny. So whatever's ahead, let's kind of face it, and we will face it together. So they go through the door. The moment they're in front of it, I'm like, they're in once again, I like that thought of making it so it's right, it doesn't completely discount the original Charm Ones. It just makes it so this series takes place in a multiverse. That that both, because it's to me, I look at the British and the North American being humans. They're adaptations of each other, but those stories don't necessarily contradict each other. So I believe those stories, maybe it's been a while since I've seen both, but maybe I feel like both of those stories could coexist in the way those stories are told and their settings and their time frames, those stories could both coexist in that same continuity. So it's almost that thought process. And I like that they made it so, yeah, it's a different universe. You just pop over. And so the moment they're like knocking on the door, ringing the bell, I'm like, are they going to do it? I was like, and at first I was like, wait, what time frame is it going to be? Like, who are they going to meet? Which I'll get to in a second. But they're like, right, the door's open. So, and they kind of pull out and you're like, wow. Now, my thing is, what that could mean. One, doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get Alyssa Milano, Holly, Mary Combs, or Rose McGowan to appear in this regard. It could probably most likely be like, hey, we're the Hollowell sisters, but we're different versions of them. Once again, kind of a multiverse thing. Or it might be like, oh, we're referencing them. Like, it might, kind of a, Multiverse of Madness or a Spider-Verse situation. But maybe it's going to be a thing of, it might not even be the Hollowell sisters. They might be three other siblings that happen to have a very, very similar story to the Hollowell sisters. Like, maybe that could be what that is. I don't know. Would they have been able to get Holly, Mary Combs, Alyssa Milano, and Rose McGowan? I don't know if they would have been able to do that. If they would have, that would have been sick. But who knows? Like, that might have all happened off screen. But I feel like they probably would have worked their way around that if possible. But the other thing I was thinking about, I was like, okay, what time frame would it be? Because the original Charmed ends with a massive time skip, and I'm like, would they do that? But then I was like, no, they wouldn't have to, because they're potentially parallel dimensions. So depending on if time works the same or not, it's 2021, 2022 in that universe as well. That future at the end of that Charmed was super far into the future. Like, Wyatt was like 20s, 30s. Same thing for Chris. And obviously, all the Charmed was like way much older. Billy was much older too. So that whole situation. So I'm assuming it's been 12 years in this universe, because, that's how long it was in between it's been longer now. But what is it now? 16 years now? Because when this reboot started, which was 2018, it had been basically about 12 years since the original Charmed had ended. So it's been like I said, I think 16 years now. So there's only 16 years in the future of 16 years before that. The ending, like I said, when Billy killed her sister and everything, and then before you got the time skip, this would just be 16 years after. So this just be them older a little bit more. I mean, for all we know, like, maybe that you would meet like an older Chris and Wyatt. That would still be a thing. They wouldn't be as old, but still, like, because I don't think they'd taken over. I'm sure Piper, Phoebe, and Paige were still, doing their thing. So I'm also thinking like, well, no, if they wanted to, they could also do other stuff. I don't know if it would even be possible. I'm not trying to get into the weeds of it all, but I don't know where Alyssa Milano and Shannon Doherty stand, because I was about to say not unless they want. I feel bad either way, because I guess it just depends on who they would be able to get, if they could get any of them. Because I was about to say, it'd be interesting if they made it like, oh, this is a universe where maybe Paige never took over because Prue never died, or maybe it's like, oh, Prue never died, but maybe Paige is still. No, I just feel like it'd probably be just keeping the continuity. I think it'd just be like, right, Paige is here. I'm about to say, it's like, nah, because if they kept Paige around too, and it's like, it'd be more fitting too, because like, right, they lost Macy, they lost Prue, like there would have been a deeper connection there in that regard, storyline wise. So I would have loved to have been able to see where they would have gone with this. I think this ends on a nice note. Where it's like, right, it's conclusive enough, but you can also say like, hey, there's like way more adventures we sadly don't get to experience, but that story kind of goes, I mean, just like the original Charm, like there's so many stories in between at that ending before we got the time skip that we never got to see. Obviously, we never get to see all the adventures, when Chris and Wyatt end up taking over. So there's a lot of that, but still, I think it is a beautiful ending all around. I think it is such a bummer. I wish that the show had more, it only got like half the life of the original show. Getting this and enough, it was is, I think, a beautiful situation in its own right. Because I don't know how well received this show is. I kind of don't care. I like what I like, and I love this show. I've said it time and time again. I'm a massive fan of the original show. If you haven't heard my experience, I watched it a lot in high school. I'll probably make a video kind of talking about this a little bit too. Kind of saying, I usually make videos saying goodbye. I'll probably make a bring it back and a saying goodbye to it. I don't know. We'll see. But I don't like, I want the show to continue. I don't want this to be the end, but that's what my point is. I don't know, like, it's not like a large enough fan base behind it to keep the show alive, sadly, So it's not like HBO Max is going to, decide to do this. I don't know. Maybe someone years down the road is going to decide to do another reboot of this. I don't know. But I don't see, like, this being able to continue, which is a bummer in so many different regards. Like I said, I want the show to have the life that the original show had. And also, like, we only just got Lucy Barrett this season, and I really enjoyed her as Michaela, too. And we never get to spend enough time with her. And, sadly, I mean, obviously, we found out about how she's connected to the Charmed Ones, her friendship with Bren, maybe get some more with that in the future, or now she's met her biological parents, or obviously, we met her mom, but it was someone pretending to be her mom and not her actual mom, so, maybe kind of deal with that too, and, so I would have loved to be able to spend more time, but it's like, right, we got what we got. And I even love that the episode is kind of titled, like, the end is not, basically it's like the end is not the end. I'm butchering it, and it's very befitting, Because if I'm not mistaken, isn't like the last episode of Charmed called like Forever Charmed, I think? Because it's like, it's all kind of, once again, it kind of all comes full circle in that regard. And I guess in some ways, you could make the argument this kind of comes full circle in some regards too, with them kind of potentially meeting the Hollowell sisters. And, it's like right back to the original series and stuff. But I would have loved to have seen where season 5 would. I wouldn't want it just to stop with season 5 either. I'd want there be more time, Once again, just like, let Lucy Barrett have 5 more seasons, just like Rose McGowan got 5 seasons after, because the show ran for like 8 seasons. And once again, Macy left and Madeline left, at the end of season 3 with, Macy's death, very much like Shannon Doherty with the whole Prue situation. So I would want the show to have at least 5 more years. I think even one more season wouldn't have been enough. But I'm I would have always wanted more and more. But to get what we got, I'm happy. And I think this is a nice enough ending. And it still, like I said, leaves room for more and stuff. I'm sure the creators, showrunners and stuff, the writers have probably they probably released stuff subsequently since the show got canceled. Probably saying like, right, this is what we probably would have done. This is what the next arc or storyline would have been if the show had gotten another season at the very least, so. But like I said, to have gotten what we've gotten, I cherish that, and this is one of my favorite reboots. Next to the Tom Holland Spider-Man reboots, like TV show wise, this is my favorite reboot. But next to like just reboots in general, next to the Tom Holland Spider-Mans, this is my favorite reboots as well. I love it so much because I love how they did such a great job of paying homage to the original show, and as I've always said, remixed it. Because something I didn't think about until the end of the until I started recording this, Mel taking over the Blue Camellia. I'm like, because I completely forgot Piper had a bar. I completely forgot about it. I didn't even think about that until, like I said, I started recording, and I was like, right, because Mel's the parallel to Piper, but to be fair, all of the Vera siblings and even Kayla and Macy were all like amalgamation of the Hollowell sisters. Like they're all combination of each other in certain regards. I mean, Macy was more like Piper because she was dating their white lighter, but Phoebe, Piper and Mel have the same abilities. The whole. Not the blowing up stuff. Like, obviously Mel had a different second ability, but the initial ability is to freeze time. So, that whole thing. But maybe in the future we'd also gotten to spend more time with Mel's ability of time travel, and that probably would have led to some time traveling shenanigans and such. But, either way, having gotten what we got, as like I said, I am grateful for. So, and like I said, I wish there was more, but I feel like it seems impossible and super unlikely, but if this is the end, then at the very least, I think it's an ending I can be content with, But as with all these, endings, I wish everyone involved, cast, crew, everyone in front of the camera, behind the camera, I wish them the best in their future endeavors. I mean, I was excited to see where said people, what's the next project I'm ever going to see someone in. So I'm excited to see where everyone ends up and, hopefully lands some good projects, afterwards. I don't always say that, but I should say that more often, because I always want, I'm excited to see what everyone ends up doing next. So, but yeah. I think, I've run my mouth off quite a bit, as I typically do, because I never want it to end, because that just means the end. But, the end is not the end, essentially. So, that's really all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good